Hello and welcome to the Property Unleashed podcast with me, Mark Fitzgerald. And today I am joined by another super guest, a gentleman whose name is absolutely amazing. I have to say, when I first met him, Shaq Baker is brilliant. So Shaq, it's great to have you on the show and it's great to be able to talk to you about what you're doing in the property world as well.
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Mark, man. Really appreciate you, bro.
No. My pleasure. My pleasure. So for the listeners who may not know about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've sort of got to where you are now?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? So my name's Shaq Baker. I'm a full-time property developer. I am the founder and the CEO of a company called The Property Shack. So I just wasn't very creative there, but
It works.
You got to use what you can. Yeah, exactly. And it works. It works. We source and develop off-market land, airspace opportunities, anything really that we can build using off-site manufacturing or modern methods of construction. So that's sort of my main thing.
Yep. And what made you get into sort of property to begin with?
Property. I think like most people, growing up, I was very ambitious. I was very driven. I always had in my mind that I was going to be successful. I couldn't have told you how or what length of time. But from when I was a child, from quite early, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. From I was 13, actually, to be specific. I was 13 years old, and my business studies teacher said to me, he was mentioning something. He said, something like an entrepreneur. And I thought, I've never heard of that word before. And I said, sir, I put my hand up. I said, what's that? And he just said, he described it. He said, it's, a businessman. I said, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So it's always been sort of working, grinding. Ambition was always something that I've had. And so I always knew I wanted to be sort of a self-made guy. And I think with property, where that came from was growing up as someone that never owned their own property. My parents never owned their own property. I saw it as something, as quite a major milestone and a major achievement. And so I loosely wanted to learn more about it. And I think like most people, like a lot of people, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a massive eye opener. And I think it's a great book. It gave me what I think I needed to do, but not how to do it. And so I think just doing more research and seeing that a lot of wealthy people own property. I used to read the Times Rich List, and most people on that rich list, if they wasn't sort of predominantly involved in property, they own property. So I saw that as a consistent thread. And it's just something that you can't really go wrong with, bricks and mortar. So it started from young, but I guess from a serious level, maybe sort of 2014, I was set on trying to do something. So my plan really was to buy my flat from the council. That was my only plan. That was my whole property strategy. Buy a flat and you've made it. You made it, buddy. Buy your flat and you've made it. So that was literally my plan up until 2016. And I met my brother introduced me to a fellow masterminder called Tom Horner. Shout out to Tom. And he literally gave me a copy of Property Magic, told me about a pin meeting, and the rest is history.
Yeah, well, it's the education route. And I think you've got to be open to the education route, haven't you? And Rich Dad, Poor Dad's like a stable for everybody. It is such an eye-opening book because it's very simple. In fact, I prefer Cash Flow Quadrant, which is another one of the Robert.
Yeah.
But Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when you read it and you just see how basic, how basically we're almost molded to live and act a certain way with our investments, with our lives.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, see that turned on its head in such a simple manner, but makes so much sense.
It makes a lot of sense. He basically managed to curate a very, very enlightening narrative in a simple story. And because sometimes the story I felt like the story kind of goes back and forth a bit. And I prefer more of a direct approach personally. I like stuff that's a bit more do this and get that. I'm a very sort of direct person in that respect. But what he did was he was able to show, I guess, sort of empathy and enlightenment at the same time.
Yeah.
And without sort of putting one side down, without saying, well, don't be like poor dad, but it's just about, all right, well, actually things like society and education are always geared in a way that's going to give you everything you may be looking for. So the goal really is to just be, like you said, be open-minded, constantly be learning, be open to learning, and be open to just adjusting the way we do things.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
And I think, a book, a podcast, a YouTube channel, a video, just talking to somebody can just give you that aha moment. And that is something, because people say, well, why is this not taught in school? I'll be quite honest with you, because with the mindset that you have when you're at school and maybe from teachers and things, I don't know, I'm not a teacher. But at the end of the day, you have to have that moment. Now, it took me nearly 40 years to have that moment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I've had it, and I'm so glad that I have. And obviously, if you're even later in the day, so to speak, and older, you've got to find that for yourself, because if you don't, you'll look at other things, or you'll look at possibilities, or you'll look at potentially being coached, trained, mentored, shown the right direction as, well, that's just them getting rich. That's just them making money and everything like that. And yes, people need to make money and things, but if they've got the education and the skills to be able to point you in the right direction, it's education and it's money well spent, because it cannot be taken away from you.
It's the best investment you can have.
Yeah.
It's the best investment you can have.
So you've gone an untraditional route, haven't you, in your property investing, which in this country, it's still relatively new. It's still pretty unheard of with the modular. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Yeah,
I mean, it's for some reason that I'd say the UK is quite late to the party, but there has been very early adopters. And I've met people on my journey, and they're like, I was doing this 30 years ago, and they were. But the difference is, I think the UK generally, as people, we're quite conservative, and not always the most innovative. If something's broke, don't necessarily fix it. And I think the construction industry, it's one of the largest industries in this country. So I think, but because it works a certain way, it's just, they're just like, if it ain't broke. And so for me, I love innovation. I love anything new. I love anything that's progressive. And it's all good looking at shiny things. But when I looked at it, I thought, well, this kind of answers this gives us a solution to a lot of the issues we have, a lot of the bottlenecks. And so essentially what it was, I sort of got my education in property in sort of 2000. I started in 2016, getting into 2017. And I was always hell-bent on building stuff. I used to just see, like I said, it's that ambition in me, man. It's a beast. But you can't run before you can crawl. And so I'd see buildings and be like, I'm going to build something like that. I have to. That's what I want. I'm motivated to do that. But I'm not a technical person. So when you look at buildings, you think, well, look at all the technical drawings and the M&E and everything that goes into it. And that's not me. But I'm obviously on the creative side. So I was introduced to offsite construction by a friend of mine. He's also a property investor and developer. And he basically was told me quite crudely, like, you know what, you can just get these buildings and just put them on top of buildings like Lego, just like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? That like, he explained it so very loosely because he didn't fully understand it himself, but he definitely planted the seed. Literally, his name's Carl. Carl planted the seed. He told me this stuff, and from then on, I was very, very intrigued. So I just done research, and that led to me sort of looking more into it. And essentially, what it was, Carl's definition was quite poor, to be honest. But what it led to me finding out was that people were able to build homes off-site, i.e., build them in factories, build them in alternative places, which meant that you could then build ultimately a product quicker, safer. It's not open to the elements, so it's safer. You're in an internal environment, so it's safer for staff, and people. And I mean, if you look at being on site and, you know, you're using a laser to kind of balance things out. If you're doing it inside, you can be sort of, not a laser, you can, a spirit level, sorry, your spirit and stuff, but inside you could use a laser to get things very, very accurate. So when I looked at all of those things, I thought, well, that makes a lot more sense. The only thing was me then, well, transporting it to site, like how does that work? That part was the missing bit for me. But I took some time out and I went and visited factories. I went on site, I went and saw people's sites that were using it. And it was faster, it was more economical. In terms, as a developer, it's a very risky game. So your job is to minimize your risk as much as possible. So if you can do as much preparation in another location, then you've mitigated a lot of risk. You saved a lot of time. So it was just a different way of working. I say to people, it's not actually, it's technically the same materials, it's steel, timber, you know, it's the same stuff. Just the method's done is different. The method's different. So it's just done differently, but it's the same things. And I loved it. And I think one of the biggest things was your ability to be to create a better product, like a home that's more like it performs better. So it's a high performance home. It's more economical, it's more sustainable, which is then better for the environment. And then the more I looked into it, you know, people are building houses that are pretty much 100% recyclable. So I just thought this ticks all the boxes for me. Again, I was like, well, like you were saying, the example with the school, if it's so good, why isn't everybody doing it? I don't have the answers, but I think it just comes down to change. Change sometimes does take a long time. It does take a long time. And there's a you know, me and you've spoken together a couple of times now. One of the quotes I say in my talk is, you know, change is inevitable. And a good example of that is like Blockbuster Video. You know, don't want to be a Blockbuster Video in a Netflix world. And at one time, Blockbuster Video, you remember, that was like the biggest thing every week. That was like a big treat. We're going to go into Blockbuster Video, rent a video, rent some games. And that's now changed. Yeah. Because we've changed, our demands have changed, our requirements have changed, our lifestyles changed. So I feel, for me, this is that in construction.
Right, yeah. And a caveat on that, I do have to say, I do miss Blockbuster.
It was a good day out. It was a good day out.
Like, take the kids up when they were small and just pick a film and things like that. Those were the days, you know what I mean? Literally,
like we'd go, there was one on Clapham High Street and we'd go there and it was like, obviously I was a lot smaller then, but it was like a city inside, just full thousands of films, to the point where you could spend so much time in there. So again, but it's now you just got it on your, you know, on your screen and you just flick through.
Click a button. I mean, I remember going in there, used to run to get like the latest release because somebody might have it all weekend. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it was like, oh, I can't watch that.
Yeah. So I remember big films like Terminator 2 and stuff coming out, and that waiting for someone to return Terminator 2. I mean, young people, they don't understand the struggles. That Terminator 2 struggle was a struggle. It took me ages to see that.
That's where you learn patience, isn't it? That's where you had to have patience. You're like, oh my God, no. Come on.
Mom, Terminator 2's back. You need to give us some money so we can get Terminator 2. Yeah.
Brilliant. But no, I mean, going back to it, I think also, you know, it's fascinating what you do. And obviously you talk on a pin circuit, you talk on other circuits as well. And we've met at events where we've both been speakers and things. So, you know, you've heard mine a couple of times, I've heard yours as well, but it fascinates me each time because I'm one of these people that the more I hear something, the more I take in, the different things I take in as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I always sit there and just think to myself is, in the market that you're in with the modular building and stuff, it's almost opened up a massive playing field for you, because not only are you not having to look for new plots of land to build your buildings on, you can just build on top of existing buildings.
So with that, I guess with one of the great things with the offsite construction is there's an element of it where, because it's basically advanced engineered. And so being able to utilize these systems and that technology, it means we can build very, very robust dwellings, but they're nowhere near as heavy as, say, using like tons of cement and things like that. So a building now would be a lot lighter than a traditional build. So that's giving us the opportunities to then, what you just mentioned, building on top of building. So we call it like airspace, which is just obviously building in the air, or rooftop developments. But there's as a strategy, something that I'm currently doing now, where if you sort of take a small, sort of low level blocks of flats, we can build an extra story or two on top of that under permitted development. And one that it just ticks so many boxes, because with obviously permitted development means your planning process is going to be a lot quicker, but then also the building out of the structure is a lot quicker because we're using offsite construction. So you can get on top of the building with a crane and scaffolding, and we can have the sort of the external walls and the roof up and sort of watertight within a week. So it lends heavily to just creating more homes and opening up other opportunities. Like obviously we could still build on traditional land and stuff, but I think the ability to do stuff like airspace is a game changer. That's a massive game changer for the market, for developers, for us trying to fulfill the quota for new houses, social housing, everything. Really, it kind of lends itself to everything.
Yeah. And I mean, for somebody, myself, it's pretty new to me. Obviously, I've been talking to you about it and stuff like that. But if you had a block of flats and you put another couple of levels on the top of that, how do you actually fasten it to that building?
How?
Yeah.
Can you sellotape, prick stick, anything like that?
Really?
No, it's
no nails. No nails.
No nails. That'll work. It's basically done with just sort of typical engineering. So we'd get like a suspended floor that we attach to the roof, and then that's kind of I'd say, without being crude, bolted together. But then it's literally just formed alongside the roof or within the roof, and it's extended from there. So very, very like no difference to if you was doing like an outrig or a loft extension. You have to kind of do the extension out the back. You just kind of extend it and build it out and clad around it. So it's a similar process to that, but just done in a more robust way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Probably a silly question, but as I say, if you don't
it's a great question. Most people, there's never, when it comes to construction, there's never a silly question. And I pride myself on trying to ask the silliest questions, because at least then, one, I know, and two, it can't be that silly if I've asked it. So people have said to me, well, how do you get to that floor? And as much as it seems like a silly question, it's not a silly question, because well, how would you? So it's generally depending on if that block already has a pre-existing lift, then the lift will be extended. But a lot of the time, if they're low-level blocks, they normally don't have lifts. So if you're talking about maybe a 3-story block, they don't normally have lifts, and it just would be having an extra staircase. So if you're on the top floor and you've just sort of walked up the stairs, they'll just be doing an extra staircase that goes there, and that then opens up, and you just open up the roof and do it that way. Yeah.
No. As I say, there's no silly questions if you don't know the answer at the end of the day.
No. And we were all beginners once. So whenever people ask me questions, I'm happy to answer. And sometimes it highlights things that I don't actually know. So someone could say, well, how do they do that? And I say, I don't know. That's not my job. We just employ people for.
Well, that's it. If you don't know the answers, you just go and find them, don't you?
Yeah, basically.
Does it have to be flat roofs to build on site, or could you have a pitch roof and potentially get that converted into putting a level on top?
It doesn't have to be flat. Flat's obviously easier.
Yeah.
I have 2 potential pitch roofs that we're looking at working with. It's a bit more work, but it's not impossible. It just means that you then obviously have to then create another floor. But again, it's straightforward. I think the difference is with the roof with a pitched roof. So one of them we have to put that same pitched roof back on top. So that's a different set of work, because then you've got to remove a roof, cover it, and then put it back on. If you're just removing the roof but then adding maybe a new roof on, then that's quite different. So no, it's not impossible, and it is straightforward. It's just, in my opinion, it's more work. So if I had the choice, I'd pick a flat roof over a pitched roof. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I thought so as well. But again, I just thought I'd ask the question.
Yeah.
So if you were going to build a modular house, maybe you bought a plot of land and you thought to yourself, I'm going to design it all, have it all built in house, obviously shipped in, because some of you can get really creative on them, can't you, at the end of the day, which is brilliant. But what's the sort of cost difference then from a conventional house to one of yours, so to speak?
The things with the cost, it really comes down to your spec. And I think that's where people kind of, it can get a bit of it gets grey. And so, hypothetically speaking, at the moment, I cost up what I'm working on. I use £2,200 per square meter when I'm costing up. Now, people always come to me and say, well, I could build cheaper than that. And you can always build cheaper than anything. But then it comes down to spec. And I guess we're talking now where maybe before pre-COVID, maybe 2000, there's definitely been an increase in prices over the last 4 years, like massively. There was stuff I was quoting up at like maybe 1,700 a square meter, and there's nowhere I could build for that price anymore. So as much as 22 seems expensive, depending on what part of the country you're in, most of these I'm doing are in London, and traditional in London costs more than that. Yeah. The good thing is with it is that's including everything. That's like your kitchen, your bath. That's fully turnkey. That's kitted out, and on top of that, the performance is the best performance you can get in terms of thermally. So the thermal performance of the house, we can build to what they'd consider a passive house standard, which is basically an airtight home, and that allows you to control the temperature and the environment of the house, and it just provides a healthier option, definitely more economical option as well. So with that, I mean, people ask me all the time, so I could build for 2,000, because like, you're comparing apples and pears. If you was to build for 2,000 but then had this spec, you'd find that you'd probably end up spending maybe 2,400, 2,500 easy. In London, maybe I know people that are spending $3,000 in London at the moment. So it's understanding what you're getting for what cost. So to get basically a top performing, thermally efficient house for 2,000 £2,000 a square meter is very good. Yeah. And this climate is very, very good.
And also, I'm supposing you're not going to have a lot of the hidden problems that you can get when you do conventional buildings and things, because as long as you've got your plumbing and everything's there where you're putting the property. Yeah. If it's built in house, you know what's going on. There's nothing.
Everything. It's easier to plan. It's easier to test. It's easier to, again, what I say to people, the best way to look at sort of offsite construction is if you combine the automotive industry and the construction industry, and they merge. That's what offsite construction is. So if you think of a car, I always say to people, would you build a car outside? And most people are like, well, no, I wouldn't. I'm like, but cars their sole purpose is for outside. I'm like, yeah, but I wouldn't want my car built outside. So I'm like, well, that's how you need to see your house. And if we basically, everything, all of the benefits of building your car internally, because you can test everything and build it and get your spec right, we can do that with houses. So if you think of all of the technical parts of your house where there's components that need to, like, i.e. a bathroom, if you know that actually rather than having everything brought together and then doing all your pipe work on site and linking all up and connecting, you can do that inside somewhere and connect it all together. So like your bathroom, imagine that's your car engine, that's already done. So you just take that whole thing and bring that to site, that's done. So once you do one connection, everything else is fine. So it's a great way. Again, it's the whole point of offsite is to de-risk the construction process and just get better with which makes it easier to know what your schedule of works is and easier to know what your costs are going to be, which in this game, property costs and time, which both affect each other massively, are they're very hard to control sometimes. So
Yeah,
the more we're able to control it is better for us, really.
Well, it can get out of hand, can it? Things can spiral quite easily, and that's why I was just thinking then when you were talking that obviously if you know what your plan is, you know what you're doing, because you're controlling the elements that you're doing it in as well. So you've not got delays, you've not got to send people home or from site because the weather's too bad to be able to build.
Exactly. Weather's, I mean, in you know, depending on what part of the UK you're in, because some parts are worse than others, but weather's always an issue. And especially if you're doing wet trades, it's literally, it could throw you off site for weeks, which could turn into months. And just having that contingency, there's all these little delays, it all compounds at the end, and then you're over, you know, you're over your schedule by like months and months and months, which affects your bottom line, which affects your lending, all sorts.
Well, that's something that you factor a bit in, obviously, when you're doing projects and stuff, if you're smart. But at the end of the day, you can't factor in, you know, the country getting hit by a storm that knocks your team out for 3 months, puts you back by all of that time. And that, like you say, it's expense that people will say to you, I can do it cheaper. Yeah, but you can't guarantee that it's going to be cheaper when you get to the end.
Yeah. No, it's a hard one. And as investors, we're very optimistic. That's the whole point. You know, you wouldn't be investors if you wouldn't do it if you didn't think you could do it. But it's just being realistic and not even being realistic, just being open to change and things just going left. So again, bad weather, illness, delays, there's all sorts of things that we can't control. So my thing is, the more we can control what we can control, that's definitely the better option for us. Yeah.
And of course, I know it depends on the spec and what you're building and everything. And of course, my background is the leisure industry. So I used to run production lines for motorhomes. But of course, I also used to go to the site where they had the statics, where they used to build the caravans and the static houses and stuff like that. So, you know, they're modular, but they're not the level of detail that we're talking about here. But I get the idea. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's almost like a conveyor belt of production of things getting done in stages and put together in the right manner. But I mean, from your perspective, then, if somebody came to you and said, "I've got this plot of land, it's ready to rock and roll. I want a 4-bed house. All right, it could be any spec." What's the sort of lead time? Because obviously, if you're building houses now, it's normally the foundations that take a majority of the time. And of course, just getting the walls up and the roof on, and then it's getting it all finished. But I mean, on a modular house, what is the sort of lead time on those on average? I know you can't give a specific.
I mean, it varies. There's different types of construction. So volumetric is where they're sort of built in container style and then built together. So in boxes. So maybe a volumetric home could essentially be sort of 4 containers combined. Obviously, it would look like containers, but that volumetric is probably the fastest. We've got you've got steel frame, you've got timber frame, you've got sit panels. The good things with I'll give you some examples, but the good things with the offsite is that, like you said, the groundworks and that could be can be a lengthy process. Now with traditional, you've got to do all the groundwork first before you can lay one brick. With offsite, your house is being built while that's happening. So as soon as that's done, your house is done. So they're both done at the same time, essentially, depending on the type. But if not done completely, it's ready to go. So you don't have to then start laying bricks, like brick by brick by brick. You can then basically get a structure up pretty much straight away. I mean, if you're using volumetric, there's like companies like Ideal Modular in Liverpool, and they, you know, you'd be looking at sort of maybe like a couple of months for delivery of your materials, but they build, I'm pretty sure the last time I saw them, they build a house in like 4 days.
I mean, 4 days.
Yeah. 4 days built.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then it's got to be taken to site. But I think even inside, even on site, once it's, I think they can put it together within the day. I think they showed me about 6 hours. So if you compare that to, so while your groundwork's been done, that's gone off to be ordered and whatnot. And again, it depends on the availability. If they already have the materials, then you don't have to wait that lead time. With the system that we use, it's a combination of like SIP panels, which is structural insulated panels. So they're basically like boards, like sandwich boards. It's got like your insulation in the middle, and that kind of builds your walls. So that with a frame, if you look at the frame, you've got your frame maybe made out of steel with timber and your SIP panels, then, you know, you could get, like I said, we could get airtight, watertight within a week. So a house would be, with SIPs, we'd build a house in about 4 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the type of house. So again, so if you getting your groundworks done and that takes you maybe a month or so, then we would have the house built in another month. And that's again, that's turnkey, that's everything. That's bathrooms installed, that's kitchens installed. That's everything. You just have to, he's got to just move in after that.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So talking about your business then, the Property Shack, what are you fundamentally doing then? Are you looking for sites? Are you looking for customers? What do you do? I mean, do you go out there looking to, you know, build things and then sell them, or do you look for people to work with?
It's a bit of everything. So essentially, so as the Property Shack, we source and develop land and airspace. At the moment, predominantly airspace I'm focusing on, just mainly because of, like I said, the permitted development. It just means that where I've had projects with land, looking at planning, and you know, it's quite a long process. Planning in this country can be a bit long. So with the airspace, because of the quickness of being able to get over the line, that's what I'm essentially focusing on. So as a developer, I'm constantly looking for sites, but I'm always open to people have sites. If, you know, if people hit me up with stuff, then I look into it. Sometimes I have friends to say, Shaq, I've seen a flat roof. What should I do? And I'll say, well, no, shout me if it's something that we can get over the line. Then I'm happy to work something out. Outside of that, I'm a director of offsite construction company called Leap Factory UK. So that's where we supply build systems for developers, housing associations, self-builders, anyone that's looking to build, and basically, like I was talking about, build anything, houses, flats, apartments. But we can build zero carbon to a passive house standard, and it's super eco-friendly, super sustainable. So between the two, so obviously I develop for myself, I build for myself, but I can also provide offsite construction for people. And those two things combined, I've sort of this year taken it upon myself to start doing training to help people that want to either develop themselves, maybe want to build their own house, or people that are looking to get into development and don't know how. I've basically set up training for that, which is focused predominantly on airspace, but the principles of offsite construction are the same principles, whether you're building on the ground or the air. At the core, it's the same. Obviously, with airspace, it's going to be different from a structural perspective, from a technical perspective, but you know, that's, you know, a good team can do that. But I've basically created the 6-figure airspace blueprint to help people. Yeah, 6 fab, that's what we call it. So yeah, that's basically, I'm going to sort of roll it out from January properly. At the moment, I've just been working with 1 or 2 people, but really it's just, that's to kind of help. Cause like I said, it's for me, it's a game changer, just because you're using pre-existing blocks, roofs that currently don't really have any value. But the government changed that in 2020. They decided that we were able to build under permitted developments, and now roofs have the ability to create more homes. So I'm just helping people kind of understand it from a I guess a technical perspective, but also from a business perspective, and how they can take that and turn that into six figures. So yeah.
Yeah. What sort of warranty do you have on them then?
On properties.
Yeah.
So with offsite construction, it has its own warranties. So there's for offsite, there's a sort of one of the key. There's a couple of warranty providers. One of the key ones is called Volpass. Volpass offers great warranties. Briam, we're registered with Briam. Again, super sustainable, very good, highly recognized warranties that the lending institutes recognize and are happy to lend against. Plus, you can also get your traditional guarantees like Premier and NHBC and stuff like that. So it ticks all the boxes. But this has been a long time coming, because for years the banks were not skeptical, but they were unsure about how it worked, because it was very different to traditional. Everyone knows it, they understand it, things are done in a very specific way. People come with this new age Jetson stuff. They're like, nah, it seems so. Yeah, so it's taking its time, but it's there now. It's there. The warranties are in place, and they're happy. People are happy to lend on them.
That's good. That's good. I mean, you just want that peace of mind, don't you? Anything new, the first thing you're always thinking about is, oh, what happens if something goes wrong? I don't know anybody else that's done this.
People want to see it first. I remember, I used to tell my mum for years, because she wears glasses, and said, you should look at getting laser surgery for you. And she was like, I want to see it first. I want to get it first, and then I'll check back in after 10 years. I can still see. So I get it. People want to see it. People want to touch it. People want to know that it's being lent. The lenders are lending on it. So yeah, I completely get it. And my goal is to kind of educate people where I can, to kind of facilitate them, help them on their journey, and just kind of push it forwards, push the industry forward on the offsite side.
I think it's exciting, and I think you've got a good purpose there. You've got your vision, you've got what you're trying to do, which is also it's more economical for the country, for the environment and everything. Yeah. I was fascinated the first time when I sat and listened to you. I was like, oh, this has got legs. And then the second time when I sat and listened to you, I thought, get over the fact that he was a rap star. And now I start looking. But why do you think, in your opinion, more and more people haven't picked this up? Because it's not, you're still seeing all these houses being built traditionally. And I just think to myself now, hang on a minute, you know what I mean? There's some big sites, some big players out there, and you'd have thought that people might start adapting things. Do you think there's a fear? I mean, the property, before you answer, the property market is very old aged. You only got to look at solicitors, like you say, and all of that sort of jargon and stuff. It's just ridiculous that in this day and age now it takes so long to buy and sell property and stuff like that. But obviously, with this coming in, you could speed up the process, and I just, it's not something you walk around and see all the time. You might see the odd crane and stuff like that, and I see pictures of things, particularly in like magazines and stuff like that. But you don't often see it, do you?
No, and it's bro. I mean, the best way to answer is, I just think it's people. It's the old school mindset. A lot of people that are clinging on to that, what they're actually doing is they're trying to justify their value. That's what most people are doing. I've got nothing against planning consultants, solicitors, but not all of them are that good at what they do. And so they justify, well, this process takes this long. And I think that's a way of them kind of saying, well, that's them holding on to their value. Your value is what you create, not the time it takes you to do it. And I think sometimes, and again, that's a challenge, because sometimes what we do is, if we create something very quickly, the perception of its value is sometimes lessened. So people say, well, you give me £1,000, I'll do your legals. It's going to take you 6 weeks. The reality is, bro, they could do it in a day. Yeah. They could. If everyone answered the phones and did so again, I'm a big believer in innovation and things moving forwards, and I love the idea of smart contracts and blockchain and all that stuff. Now, so the fear of that is that dialogue, then a lot of people say, well, what about us? We'll lose our jobs. No, you wouldn't. It just means that, again, if you're creating that value, I would still spend that grand. I'd actually spend more if you did it for me in a day. That's the thing. And again, it's the value. If you say, look, Shaka, I'll give you what you want. There's two prices. It can take 6 weeks and it costs you £1,000. Or if you give me £1,500 in a day, I will give you £1,500 every day of the week. So it's an old school mindset, old school traditions, just people being stuck in the way they work. And sometimes no one wants to be the early adopter, no one wants to make the first move. What you'll find, it's quite, you'll see a lot more use of offsite in the commercial market. So do you know who's killing it? Starbucks, McDonald's, all of those people. They are killing it. And the reason they're killing it is because there's a commercial, they're focused on their returns. So I say to people sometimes, and hospitality, hotels and stuff, sometimes you'll be driving down the motorway and you see a Starbucks and that wasn't there last week. So they're smashing it because they're commercial entities. They're focused on creating a return. With residential, the difference is a lot of the big boys, a lot of them, the big developers, they're just used to doing things a certain way, and they're focused on, for me personally, they're focused on maximizing their returns. So they're happy to keep things the way they are. A lot of them are going, a lot of them are, to my understanding, a lot of them are investing in factories. So they're looking at migrating. But at the moment, they make so much money churning out the level of stock they churn out. A lot of them ain't changing. So it really comes down to sort of niche developers, SMEs coming in and saying, right, we're going to change the game. We're going to try and create a product that's faster, more efficient, better for the environment, and hopefully we can have more of an impact. I think the struggle then is getting the councils on board. When I speak to the council, it's like, it's that old school stuff. We don't understand it. We're not sure. So it's everyone kind of at the same time. It has to work in unison, or you're just fighting. You're just a lone ranger trying to fight a good fight by yourself. It will come. There's a lot of people that are doing it singularly, just everyone pulling together and making it work.
I think, I think you're right. And I do think with the way you put it with the Blockbuster, it'll be that. Everybody's like, no, this is the way we do things. We've always done it this way. We've always done it. And then all of a sudden, one day they're going to be left behind and they're going to go under because they haven't gone with times and they haven't moved forward. With Blockbuster, they were asked about Netflix, I think I can't remember when it was, but they were asked, what do you think of these dudes? And it was like, these guys they're nothing. We don't care about those guys. And again, not to make light of their situation, but that it's a great example of them saying, if it's not broke, where they could have looked at it and thought, actually, there's an opportunity here. We should potentially look at maybe buying them out, partnering with them, creating competition, just like you see with the streaming platform. They compete. There's nothing wrong with a bit of competition, but to just completely ignore it is crazy. So people that are in this space and they're just ignoring it, even if you don't want to take on the methods, just looking at the way we can build more efficiently, or looking at more efficient materials instead of using like slate on the roofs, look at new modern materials. There's new things that people have created out of plastic and other metals and stuff that is better for the environment, and it's safer, it's cheaper, it's lighter, it's just more, just can preserve homes better and allow the houses to breathe and have less mold. And these are all things that are issues for us in here in the UK, just because of the climate and just because of the way it is. So they're all things that need to be looked at. It's just people don't, brother. No, that's true. That's true. Well, I am conscious of your time. I could sit here and talk to you about this all day because it's fascinating stuff. But I really do. I really have enjoyed what we've spoken about. I'd like to do a little quick fire round at the end.
Let's go.
Questions. Yeah. I think this would be good. And it's more just for me. I like to know what people are reading, listening to, and all that sort of thing. So I'll just start with what's good advice that you've been given, or the best advice you've been given?
Oh, oh, best advice. Best advice.
It doesn't have to be the
Generally.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I'm a guy that loves quotes. I love a quote. I literally cut and paste them. I think the best advice really is to kind of focus on our calling, focus on our passions, find things that we're great at, find things we love. And I think that's just half the story. Once you find that, is being able to then push yourself, do everything you can do to try and fulfill it. I think fulfilling it and execution is the hardest part. And something's not done until it's done, basically. So, you know, I'm a person that has all these dreams. I want to do this, I want to do that. But being able to, the difference between thinking it and doing it. So just like finding your passion and your calling, finding that thing that makes you great, that you can offer to the world, and just doing it without caring what people think, I think is the best advice you could ever have.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. I like that. If you were still in the corporate world, what job would you think you'd be doing?
Corporate world. It's funny, I've always had an eye for like marketing, advertising. I always used to see adverts and things like that. I thought I could do a better campaign than that. That's rubbish. That or probably some sort of work with young people or youth. I wouldn't be a social worker, but something that because that, you know, the red tape around that, but something where I could be hands-on, trying to help impact young people's lives, something like that.
Yeah, cool. I like that. I like that. So if you could sit down with 3 people and have dinner, and they could be alive or dead, who would you like to sit down and chat to?
Jay-Z would be one of my first. I'm a massive Jay-Z fan. I love everything about him in terms of what he's accomplished and where he's come from. Oh man, who would be my others? Jay-Z. I think I always used to bounce between sort of Branson and Steve Jobs. It's like I like those dudes. Yeah. So I think right. So Jay-Z, I would say Jobs, and
you got your thinking here, haven't I?
I know you put me under pressure. Maybe Branson as well. I was going to say Buffett, but I think with Branson, he's got like a creativity. When I look at the stuff that he's overcome, and not his challenges as such, but then just the way his brain works, and apparently he's dyslexic, and just the way he's still been able to unlock certain things. I like that. So yeah.
Well, they're all pioneers in their own industries as well, aren't they? At the end of the day, they're all trying, see what's out there and make it better.
Basically, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I think, that I would have that'd be a very good lunch or dinner.
I think you're fitting well with them. Brilliant. Do you listen to podcasts? If you do, what's your 3 sort of go-to podcasts?
I don't listen to podcasts that much.
Okay.
I don't. I used to be more. Because what started happening was I just started doing more audiobooks.
Yeah.
So I found once I started doing audio, because books take me a long time to read. So I substituted reading for audiobooks. And even then, I'd have a good run with the audiobook, but then sometimes I'd get it break up. So I find with podcasts, I sort of catch them when I catch them. Audiobooks, I tend to I push myself to try and finish. I've got like 20 books where I've just done the first couple of hours. So I push myself to complete books. Like I said, focus on not only what you want, but then getting it. So I try to finish the book. So that leaves me less time to do podcasts. So yeah, I tend to do books more.
Yeah, and I've found with books as well, sometimes it is quite good to read a bit, go away, maybe read something or listen to something else, go back to it. because there are a lot of books that have got great knowledge and you know, I love books, but I always used the same as you. I always used to try and finish them, but sometimes they're full of fluff as well. You know what I mean? Sometimes the first 3 or 4 chapters, you can actually get everything you want.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I don't think a lot of people are very, not many people admit that. And so there are books, sometimes they've obviously tried to make a quote or tried to, so there's some books I read and I'm like, those last 20 pages are pointless. That's just more of a, that's more from a book's perspective. So I do struggle sometimes, my brain switches off. But yeah, I still try to get it done. And I think without putting pressure on myself, someone said to me once, just focus on what you're getting from it as it is, rather than trying to understand all of it. If there's some parts that don't resonate or you don't like, just kind of just keep going, but just don't focus on it.
Yeah,
so yeah,
that's good. That's good. That leads us on to the next question. What's your top 3 books?
One of my top ones I always love and I'll always revisit is Jim Rohn's Art of Exceptional Living. I love that. Yeah, game changer. There's so many good books. I think I tend to read predominantly business books, but one that's Alchemist. The Alchemist is an amazing book, and again, not so much a business book, just as a you know, as a life book. You know, opens up your eyes.
I think I've heard of that.
You've never read it?
No.
Alchemist by, I think it's you pronounce it Paulo Coelho or something like that. But The Alchemist, yeah, brilliant book.
I'll have a look at that.
And then there's loads in the middle. Richest Man in Babylon, I think is amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. But I'd probably have like see, this is hard. You know, it really depends on who I'm speaking to and what they need. Because sometimes you might say, oh, well,
let's say self-development. I'm all up for self-development.
Self-development. Okay.
Self-development.
Self-development. Then you're looking at like Atomic Habits. You're looking at like 90-Day Year. You're looking at like Go for No. Go for No was an interesting one because someone recommended it to me, and yeah, actually, Go for No is a great one because it's a very, very short read. Again, they've managed to, similar to Rich Dad Poor Dad, they've got this story, and they just basically put their principles into the story. It's a clean story, so the book is is not long, so it doesn't have the fluff that other books have. It's basically they've got this story and they wrap their message up in it. Someone gave it to me and said, look, Shaq, on your journey if you're finding, as a property person, you're finding sites, you're finding deals and stuff, read Go for No. And I started it and I was like, okay, not sure how this works. And then when I finished it, I think you can listen to it in over 2 hours. I was like, this is an amazing book. I actually reached out to the authors and just said, look, just in terms of the way it's a simple concept, but it helps you to reframe how you think about what you're doing. So I'll simplify it. Go for No is essentially if you're in any kind of sales, we're property people, so we're trying to talk to vendors. You might be on the phone and you're phoning vendors up, or you're speaking to whoever, and you say, I want to try and get 1 deal a month or whatever you're doing. But every time you pick up the phone and someone says, oh, I'm not interested, or I remember the first time I was getting calls from HMO landlords and they were kind of rude, I was like, whoa, it really set me back. So the no was actually quite scary. And their whole thing was, you've got to reframe it. Rather than focusing on getting your yeses, you want to go for the no's. So your aim really should be, you want to try and get maybe 3 yeses and then you've done a good day's work. That goal now needs to be, you need 20 no's today. So when you get a no, you're like, oh, that's unfortunate, no worries. Okay. So you're kind of excited about the no. And they basically said the person that has the most no's is the person that has the most yeses.
Yep.
But you don't think of it like that. When you're trying to get these yeses and you're getting the no's, it's quite demoralizing. If you're saying, right, today I'm going to get 20 no's, I'm going to knock on 20 doors, and it's just a numbers game. And that really helped me. A very simple approach, but I think it's a game changer. And I think if people can kind of take from that, go for no's, embrace it. Even in life, if you're trying to achieve what you want to achieve and someone tells you no, on to the next one. Your goal is to get as many no's as you can.
That's it. Don't need to buy the book now, but I always recommend the book. I always recommend the book. It is a great book. I did the same when I started out in property and stuff, and it was like, go for it. What's that all about? And can't remember how I actually ended up stumbling across it. Like you say, lovely little thin book. You can read it in a couple of hours. It takes me a couple of hours, but simple concept. And it really is, like you say there, it's like go for 10 no's in a day. If your first phone calls are yes, it's like, oh crikey, I've got to make 11 phone calls now because I still need the 10 no's. And it's like you say, it's just changing that whole concept. So the way you put it there is brilliant as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's a great one. Anybody who hasn't read it, read it. So it's been fantastic to have you on, my friend, to be able to chat to you about all of this. It really has.
Thank you, bro.
If people want to reach out to you and find out more about what you're doing, what's the best channels to do so, my good man?
I'm on everything, and fortunately for your lovely listeners, I'm the only Shack Baker in existence. So if you go on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, this Shack Baker, SHACK, Shack like a house, and Baker like a baker, BAKER. And I'm there. And then, reach out, any questions. I'm always happy to help people wherever in any way that I can. I'm a friendly chap, so reach out.
Certainly is. I'll put links in the show notes as well. So if you are listening or watching this on anything in the show notes there, he'll be a click away. And as easy as that. So thank you very much again for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I always say this to people, it'd be great to get you back on in the future as well and see or talk about some more of the developments and what you're doing in your business, if that's all right with you.
Sounds good. I'll tell you what I'll do. Once Six Fab's up and running and we've got a couple of airspace developments on the go, I'll jump back on. I can talk about specifics in case people want to know more about it. And then and I can show stuff as well. And actually, if any of your listeners want to come to do a site visit, if they're ever in London, then I can arrange it.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. That's a great offer. So we'll keep you up to date with all of that. As I say, once again, great to have you on, my man. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like it, share it, subscribe, thumbs up, put comments, and reach out to me if I can help you in any way, shape, or form as well. Remember, keep focusing on your vision, keep pushing towards those goals, and look after yourselves. Bye for now.